Okay, so we're doing another I do, you do. So remember this, how this works is I'll do the problem, then you pause it, and then you do the you do column because they should be very similar in work and the process. So for the first problem, it says determine if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So remember, when we're determining parallel, perpendicular, we're looking at the slopes. So if they have the same exact slope, the lines are parallel. If they have the opposite reciprocal slopes, then the lines are perpendicular. So if the lines are in slope-intercept form or point-slope form, then we can just pull the slope right out. If not, we have to solve and get it in slope-intercept form. So for line A, that's in slope-intercept form. So if we look here, remember the slope is in front of the x there. So our slope for this line is 5. For line B, that's in standard form, so it's not in slope-intercept form, so we need to get it in slope-intercept form. So to do that, we need to solve for y. So we're going to subtract x from each side, and then the last thing to do to get y by itself is divide by 5. So when we simplify that down, we get negative 1 over 5x plus 2. So again, our slope is in front of the x, so our slope is negative 1 over 5. Then line C is in point slope form, so the slope is 5. So now we're trying to pick the two lines that have the same slope. So A and C have a slope of 5. So same sign, same number. Opposite reciprocals, remember opposite is opposite sign, so one's positive, one's negative. And then reciprocal means the flipped fraction. So remember that 5 is technically over a 1. So if we flip that, we get 1 over 5. So that's going to make A and B perpendicular, and then also B and C are perpendicular. For this one, we're going to find the equation that is parallel and perpendicular through the line 3x plus y equals 4 using the point negative 6, 2. So first things first is we want to get the slope from the equation that they tell us that we're trying to write parallel and perpendicular to. Again, in order to do that, it has to be in slope-intercept form. So to get it in slope-intercept form, we're going to subtract the 3x, and that's going to give us y equals negative 3x plus 4. So y is by itself. So now that I have it in slope-intercept form, we can take the slope. The slope is negative 3. So once we have that, we don't care about that equation anymore because I'm just worried about the two new ones that I'm writing. So I'm writing one that's going to be parallel and has to go through this point. So parallel slope means it's the same. So the slope I'm going to use is negative 3. And then they give us this point, negative 6, 2. So that's going to be my x1 and y1. And remember, we're going to plug into point slope, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So y minus y1 is 2. The parallel m is negative 3. And then minus a negative 6 becomes plus 6. So that's point slope form. Then to convert that to slope-intercept form, we're going to distribute and solve for y. So when we distribute that negative 3, we get negative 3x minus 18. Then we're going to add 2 to both sides, so we get y equals negative 3x minus 16. So that's our slope-intercept form. And again, both those lines are parallel to the original line that was given. So perpendicular, the only thing that has to change is we have to use the opposite reciprocal slope. So since it was negative 3, it's going to become positive, and then that's 3 over 1. So when we flip that, it's going to become 1 over 3. So that's the slope we're going to use when we plug in. So we're going to do y minus, again, we're still using that same point, negative 6, 2. So y1 is still 2. Then we've got 1 over 3, and then x minus, or plus 6, because minus a negative becomes plus. So that's going to be our point slope form. Then for slope intercept, we're going to take that and distribute and solve for y. So again, when we distribute 1/3, we get 1/3 x, and then 1/3 times 6 is 2. And then we add the 2 over, so we get y equals 1 over 3x plus 4. So then this line would be perpendicular to our given line. Next, we have to write an equation based on the situation. So they say parallel to y equals 8. So parallel means the same, meaning it has to have the same slope. So if I'm just given a y equals line, that's a horizontal line. So that means that another horizontal line is going to be parallel. So y equals is a horizontal line, then it has to go through this point. So I'm looking for my y value, and that's -2. So, and again, same line would mean parallel. For parallel to x, that is a vertical line because it hits the x-axis. So again, parallel would mean the same, so we have to have an x equals equation. And again, I'm just picking my x value here, so the x value is 3 because it has to go through that point 3, 4. So undefined slope, again, that's a vertical line. So vertical lines are x equals. So x equals, and again, we have to go through this point, -4, 6, so the x value is -4. A horizontal line is the same as a y equals, so we're going to do y equals and x, y, so we get -1. Finding the x and y intercept, we're plugging in 0 for x or 0 for y. So if we want to do the x-intercept, that means we're going to plug in 0 for y. So we have -3 times 0 equals 6. So essentially this whole thing just goes away because anything times 0 is 0. So we get 2x equals 6. So when we divide by 2, we get x equals 3. Now that's our x-intercept, so that goes on our x-axis. So we're going to plot that point there at 3, 0. Same concept for the y-intercept. We're going to put 0 in for x. And again, 2 times 0 is 0, so that's going to go away. We're left with -3y equals 6. When we divide by -3, we get -2. And again, that's our y-intercept, so that goes on our y-axis. So we can draw a line through those points if we want. Slope, we're just going to count rise over run. So we go up 2 over 3, and the line's going up from left to right, so it's positive. The last problem is writing an equation in standard form. So standard form, remember, we've got some reminders over here. Ax plus by equals c, so we need to get x and y on the same side. A can't be negative, meaning the number in front of x cannot be negative. And then no fractions. So first things first, we have fractions. So we're going to get rid of those fractions. So to get rid of those fractions, both the denominators are 5. So we're going to multiply by 5 because that's going to cancel them out. Because remember, we've got 5 over 1. So if I'm doing 2/5 times 5, I'm just left with 2 because, again, those 5s cancel out in that y. 5 times 4 is 20. And 1/5 times 5, again, you're just left with the numerator because the 5s and the denominator cancel out. So that's step 1. So we did no fractions. Now, I have to get it in standard form, meaning x and y have to be on the same side. So I'm going to move this x over. So I get -1x plus 2y equals 20. Remember, you can't combine those because those are not like terms. So now I have it in standard form, but the last thing is a can't be negative. So in order to make it not negative, I'm going to multiply everything by -1 because I don't want to change the numbers. I just want to change this number in front of x from being a negative to a positive. So in order to do that, I can multiply by a -1. So then we get 1x, -1 times a positive 2 is -2, and then 20 times a -1 would be -20. So then this is standard form.